Hey everybody, and welcome to today's video where we're going to try and explain a bit more about modeling. Now today I want to show you guys how you can use one of the least used tools when it comes to modeling, and that is the compound pro-Boolean. Now if you've worked with pro-Boolean previously, if you had some experience with it, or you've talked to somebody that has used it, they will probably tell you that you should always stay away from Booleaning stuff because it will leave you with some nasty looking geometry. Well, I want to go ahead and say it right off the bat, that is simply wrong. Booleans can be an amazing tool to have, especially if you know how to work them. So let's go ahead and see how we can do a bit of Boolean operations and how they work. So for this, I'm simply going to go ahead and let me create one box. I'm going to go 20 by 20. I'm going to middle it out in the center. I'm going to hold down Shift and hold one version. I'm going to copy one more here. Make sure it's a copy. And there we go, we have 3 boxes now. So I'm going to go ahead, select them all, and on them I'm going to apply a simple standard material which only has a specular level and glossiness. This should help with getting some highlights on our models. Or you can do the same thing with a standard V-Ray material. You will just have to add a bit of reflectivity on it. Alright, so once we have these 3 boxes, I'm going to select the first one, and from here I'm going to go over to Create, and from here I'm going to change the standard primitives down to compound objects. Now by default, if you have nothing selected, you're going to see that a lot of these are grayed out, but once you select geometry, most of them are going to be available to be selected. The only thing that are grayed out is the loft and terrain, but it is basically because those are spline operations. For today, we want to go ahead and work with pro-Boolean. Now the difference between Boolean and pro-Boolean is that the Boolean, when you click it, it has more or less the same options that the pro-Boolean has, but the only difference is that once you can only have one operation at a time. So I'm gonna go and click on pro-Boolean, and let's see what we have for options here. So once you click it, the first thing you're going to notice is this button over here which says Start Picking. Now the thing you need to know about compound objects is more directly the pro-Boolean is that you have to select 2 things. The first one is that you need to select what kind of an operation this is going to be, which you can select over here where it says Operation in the Parameters roll-down menu. And the second one would be to select if this is going to be a move, an instance, a copy, or a reference Boolean. So I'll explain all of them and I'll let you guys see what exactly can happen. So by default, as it is, I'm going to change the parameter. I'm going to leave it at subtraction. And I'm going to click on Move. So I'm going to click on Start Picking, and I'm going to click on any of these 2 boxes. Let's go ahead and try with the one on the right. So I'm going to click, and the first thing you're going to notice is make sure you watch this place where it says 0 union box 1. As soon as I click this box, you're going to notice that the box disappeared, but now I have this one subtraction box 003. So I'm going to right click. So stop the picking, and I'm going to jump over to Modify. As soon as you jump over in the Modify tab, now let's see what we can do here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on this one subtraction box 003. As soon as I click it, you're going to notice one thing, that here now we have box and pro-Boolean. So make sure that you are on box 01, because if you are on the first one, or if you've selected union, you won't see that box. So I'm going to click on box, and we have this plus next to the pro Boolean. So if I click this plus, I'm going to have this where it says operands. Now when I click this, see what happens with our gizmo. It moves to the position where our original cube was. So now the thing is, while I have this operand selected, I can actually click and drag this. And notice what happens as soon as that thing comes near our original box. It kind of disappears. Now, the interesting part is what happens if I pull this down on the z-axis, or maybe even the y-axis. You're going to notice that I'm having this hole created in our scene. And that hole is exactly where the other box is supposed to be. So if I want to see exactly where that box is, all I have to do is go over here where it says display, and instead of a result, I can click on operands. Now this is going to show me both of these boxes. So if I move it on like this, and I place it wherever I want it, for example, let's place it here and click on result, I can see that the volume of our second box has been subtracted from our original box. Now here's the thing. Depending on what kind of operation we have selected, we're going to end up with a different end result. By default, this is set to subtraction over here, as you can see it. But we can change this to something else. We can, for example, change this to intersection. But you're going to notice one thing. As I'm changing these operations, nothing is actually changing. In order to see the difference, as soon as I click on intersection or union or something else, I need to update this. The way to do it is simply by clicking on change operation. So if I click change operation, now the only thing that's showing up when I click on operands and move this around is the volume that both of these boxes share between themselves. That is the intersection. On the other hand, if I change it to union and click on change operation, now you're going to notice that both of these are actually part of the same model. Now the interesting thing is when you're using the union, and if I press F3, you're going to notice that these are not intersecting anymore, but this is all a part of one mesh or one model that doesn't have those inner lines like this. So this is really good when you have to model something that's hard surface like this, and you don't have to go ahead and cut your original mesh, extrude, so you can get something like this. Now here's the other thing. What happens if, for example, we want to have, I'm going to put it back to subtraction, I'm going to hit it on change operation. What happens if I want to have, for example, a bit of a beveled edge? Now, in order to get that beveled edge over here, what I can do here is I can extract a copy from this. So I can click on instance, not a copy, I'm going to click on instance and click extract selected. This is going to create this box. Now, the interesting thing with this box is that once I select it and I move it around or move it away from our original Boolean, I can add a edit poly on top of this box, and if I select all of our edges and then chamfer them, you're going to notice that all of those changes that I'm doing to this box are transferring to our cut-in over here. So I can click on OK. I can also go ahead and change the geometry. For example, if I want to go ahead and inset one piece over here and then maybe even extrude it, that will update over here. And I'm getting a much more interesting shape. Again, if I go ahead and maybe even chamfer these sides, you can notice that all of those changes automatically update over here, because this is basically an instance of the operand that we use here. So I can go ahead and delete this, and this is going to stay like this. Now, this doesn't stop at simply having one option or one model. I can go ahead and now click on Start Picking and pick our second box. Again, I'm going to leave it on Move. I'm going to click on it. Again, it's going to disappear. But now I can click on this button over here and switch over to our second box. Let's click on the operand, move it in position. I'm going to change it to, well, let's try something like maybe a union. And this is going to continue. Let's move it upwards. Well, let's leave it up at something like this. Now, the thing here is that depending on where your model or your operation has been placed in this list, it kind of depends on how it's going to behave. For example, if I click over here, you're going to notice this reorder ops, and it says 2. If I place this on 1, like this, and click on reorder ops, what it's going to do is going to place it on top of our second box. Now the second box, or the second operation where we use the subtraction, is now below our box that we added, and that's why it's using that same extraction to it as well. So as you can see from here, the Pro Boolean can be used to create a plethora of different shapes really fast, and it's going to give you a lot more control over how your models or your hard surface models can be modeled. So we actually saw that we can use this in many different ways. So now let's see how we can use the Pro Boolean to get some shapes that will otherwise be kind of difficult to, or not difficult, but it would take more time to achieve without using Pro Boolean. So I'm going to delete this whole thing, and for this I'm going to use a simple box to start on, something like this. Again, let's go 40 by 40 by 40, position it in the middle, and now again I'm going to apply the same material, make it a black color. Alright, so the second thing that I want to show you is how you can use different kinds of geometry to merge them into one shape. For example, here we have a box, and it's easy if we want to merge it with a box, but what happens if you want to have, let's say, an indentation that would be something like a sphere or a cylinder or anything for that matter. So I'm going to try to go with a sphere. I'm going to click and create one sphere. Now, by default, your sphere is going to probably look like maybe something like 16 sides or maybe even 36 sides. And that's not really a big problem, because you can control how many sides you want to have for your model. Now, here's what I want to do. Let's say that I want to make this side of the box have an indentation in the shape of a sphere, and this side I want to have indentation at the edge of this box. Now what I want to do here is I want to take this sphere and I want to place it at the position in which I want to have that hole. So in this case it would probably be somewhere around in the middle. Let's go ahead and try to get it in the middle. We don't have to be overly exact on where we want to place it. Now here's the thing. You want to make sure when you're working with modeling like this, you want to use as little as possible in the ways of geometry. So the less geometry that you're using, the less cleanup work you're going to have afterwards. So as you saw when we started off, my segments were set at 8, and this is basically because 8 is the least number of sides you want to have for a sphere in order to geometrically be easy to work with. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate this for about 90 degrees and position it somewhere around here. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to make one more copy, put it on the side. It's not in the way. And now select our box, go over to our compound objects, click on Boolean. It's okay, we want it to be subtracted, and click on start picking. I'm going to pick my first sphere. All right. Like we saw previously, I'm going to select my sphere over here, click on operands, and now simply move it into position. I'm going to try to get it as close as possible to the edge, so something like this. There we go. With this, we actually got that to be in the middle. Now what I'm going to do is click on our original sphere, and I want to go ahead and place this somewhere around over here. Again, I want to get this edge to be in the middle, so I'm going to go ahead again, rotate it for 90 degrees, and I want to keep it something like this, but make sure it's in the middle. Okay, hopefully it will not intersect with this shape. So again, start picking and click on this sphere. Awesome. All right, let's make sure that it's in the right position. Okay, so with these two, now what I can do is I can collapse this with an edit poly, or I can simply go right click, convert to an editable poly. Whatever I want to do works here, but the thing is, if I use an edit poly, I will be able to go ahead and go back to Boolean if I want to change something. If not, then I can just right click and convert to an editable poly. Since I'm not going to change anything, I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. Now, here's the first thing that is going to happen. And this is the major reason why a lot of people shun away from using the Boolean. And the main reason is this line that you're seeing here that is being created. Now, why is this line being created? Well, Max really doesn't know how to deal with having an engon in pre-existing polygon. What that means is that this entire face was one polygon, but here we just inputted this sphere in the middle. So now instead of a polygon, Max has been tasked to deal with an engon or multi-sided geometry. So the way that Max deals with this is it takes one of these edges on that engon and connects it to the very first vertex that it can find, so it can make some kind of sense. So now in our case, it connected this vertex to the edge. Now this is not a really big problem, as we can fix all of this. But here's a thing that you probably want to do whenever you're using Booleans, and that is, as soon as you're finished with all of the options, click on vertex, select all of the vertices, and go and click on the settings next to weld. That is going to open up your weld threshold, set it up to at some small threshold, and you're going to notice that before we had 46 vertices, and afterwards we're going to have 36. What this does is it's going to take all of those vertices that are close together and it's going to weld them together. So with this, we actually get to have geometry like this. So now all we have to do is make sure that we clean it up so we can use it for our projects. So this is what we have so far. And I want to leave it up like this. And in the next video, I want to go ahead and show you guys how we can clean this up and give it so give it some clean geometry and some nice edge flows. And hopefully you guys are going to understand how you can, well, get something like this, which is more or less a complex shape, to be smoothed with correct edge flow. So if you guys enjoyed watching this video, then don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, as it really does help a lot. And that would be it for this video. I hope you guys had fun, you managed to learn something new. And if all that was true, check out the next video, and I'll see you guys over there.